I'm now going to introduce you. I'm actually really excited to present our trustee of Multicultural Cumbria and the High Sheriff of Cumbria 2019 to 2020. She's the patron of British Energy Coast Business Cluster, BECBC, Marcia Reid Fotheringham. Marcia's commitment and contribution to social engagement has been very much appreciated and recognised. Today, Marcia will share the power of speaking up. I'll pass you over to Marcia. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I've got to say, it's pretty hard to actually talk to all of you. Listening to the power and the assertion that just naturally comes through from all of you. So as I picked my topic of speaking up, please know I'm generally not speaking to you. I'm speaking to those of us who probably struggle a little bit about what to say. There are enough people who struggle. So forgive me if my message seems a little simple and a little too easy. We all know, for every single person who has spoken this morning, we know the difficulty of speaking up. Okay, so the power of speaking up. We're in a special, somewhat awful place. Things feel wrong. Things are wrong. People are depressed, frustrated, and isolated. We're worried about COVID-19 and the difficult impact it has had on all of us. And we know that as we spend time together today, additional limitations might be coming. I can go on and on about what's wrong and the little that feels right. However, even in adverse times, our job is to take care of ourselves, our family, our friends, and to take care of the world. This is a significant time to remember the importance of you and the power of your voice. We are all unique. We, meaning you, are powerful, even if at times you feel weak. Your voice matters. Our everyday words and actions can make a huge impact and make a huge difference. As stated, it's an important time to speak up. Words, actions, behaviors, they all give us power. They change the world. They can change our world. Little conversations lead to bigger conversations. We all know and experience different isms. Speaking up means you challenge people you know in your everyday, day-to-day life, and you do it face to face. That could mean you might be challenging and or speaking up to your partner, other family members, friends, and or strangers. Speaking up means you say something when you see or experience something that's not right, or perhaps said more correctly, something that is clearly wrong. It doesn't mean you have to speak up about everything. It does mean that you have to decide what's important to you. And you can just stick with that. You decide what kinds of things you want to speak up about. For some people like me, it's racism, among other things. In reference to racism, yes, I want to be treated as equal in an extremely fair way. I want everybody to be an ally of anti-racism. But for others, it might be about being male, female, domestic violence, body image, child-related issues, and or parental rights. The list can go on. You decide what's important to you. You also decide how you speak up. Any way that you choose to do it is legitimate. Being silent is not legitimate. So speaking to one other person about your concerns matters as much as speaking to 50 or 100 people. Speaking up while you're having tea or coffee is as good as speaking up at a meeting. Sometimes speaking up to a partner or family member can be more difficult than speaking up to a stranger who is doing less than caring things. No matter what, Speaking up for yourself and or your important concerns can be uplifting and can be empowering for you. Speaking up could mean you say nothing more than, no, I disagree, or I see it differently. Or it could mean that you say quite a lot, or create a platform, or write articles. Every single one of us has a responsibility to speak up about the things that are important to us. Now, the obvious question, how do you speak up effectively? Well, first, you got to take yourself and your concerns seriously. You matter. Your concerns matter. Think about what you want to say and why you want to say it. Think about how you want to say whatever it is. Do some research. Is what you want to speak about really an issue? How do you know that? What's your evidence? Why is it important to you? Guess the reaction you'll get and be prepared to handle that. I always tell people to expect rejection and dismissal, but do not let that stop you. Your point is still important. No one has to agree with you. If you're worried or feeling less than confident, then obviously start small. One-to-one conversations work. You can always check out your speaking up plans with someone you trust. Notice I said with someone you trust. As you speak up, be prepared to listen carefully to the responses you receive. Negative responses tell you where your conversation and or your research needs to go to be more effective. There may even be some positives in the negatives you receive. Now, to get some support and increase understanding, give the people you're talking to tips and hints about what they can do to join or support your concerns. And if just one person listens to you, pat yourself on the back. You've done it. You spoke up. Now that I'm more in a public arena, some of you have asked what made me speak up when I first moved to Cumbria. So now I'm going back 20 plus years. At that time, Carlisle had an annual international festival where many people came together from different walks of life to celebrate who they were. I found out about one such group. They were Morris dancers. Now, I have nothing at all against Morris dancers, but I learned they planned to dance with blackened faces to an old slave song. I thought about that, and I thought it was wrong. I contacted the festival organizers, talked about my concerns, and I was told that individual performances were actually up to the actual performers. So I contacted the Morris dancers. They explained what I already knew. They danced with blackened faces to demonstrate how men who worked after a full day in the mines would look. They added that they will be dancing to an old slave song because it was the only song which had the right beat. No matter what I said, including asking them to do one or the other, meaning dance with blackened faces to another song, or dance to the slave song but without blackened faces, no matter how offended I said I felt their performance would be, I was told they would not be changing their plans. After some thought, I decided to write a letter to the press. Days later, I was driving home. I passed a newsagent's and saw the headline in the placard, "Racial Incident in Cumbria." I went home and asked my husband what happened. His response, "You happened." So there was my letter in black and white. The result? The Morris dancers did dance without blackened faces and to a different song, meaning not a slave song. I was really pleased, even though for some, this was not welcomed. But the reality was that my little voice did matter. And through my years here in Cumbria, I've kept going. Much has changed. We are getting better. I want to continue talking about my concerns related to Cumbria. While most say that there may not be a lot of cultural or ethnic diversity in Cumbria, to say there are no racial issues in Cumbria, which is what I am often told, is just not accurate. Cumbrians can be very kind, but not always. Some of the experiences from people of difference, including some of the people we've heard from today, tell a troubling story. And the statistics back up some of those difficult stories. In 2012, there were 206 hate crimes in Cumbria. From that number, 194 were race hate crimes. Those numbers increased so that by 2019, there were 524 race crimes. 305 were racial hate crimes. These statistics, in case you wonder, come from the police. It's a concerning number and a concerning increase. While some say that this increase is because of better reporting, I think the actual incidents have increased. But behind the increase, I saw that the people affected or involved in these types of incidents were more willing to speak up, more willing to use their voices to report these wrongs. They are the ones who are helping us change. They have become the forces to reckon with. However, there are not enough of us working towards an anti-racist environment. If we as adults had conversations with each other and our kids about these types of things, we'd hear and hopefully be somewhat embarrassed about the level of prejudice in and around Cumbria. I think and hope that many in Cumbria are looking for and wanting a fairer, kinder view of our differences, whether that's related to race, culture, sex, sexual orientation, religion, disability, or any other difference. I am most concerned about our children. Parents and all adults, you are the role models for our children. We learn from you, they learn from you. If you share thoughts or comments of negativity, even indirectly, your children will too. In schools and on our streets, we have too much bullying. This bullying is felt and experienced by our children. This bullying is encouraged by adults who stand by and say nothing. That does unfortunately include parents, teachers, and some of our leaders. This bullying creates scars that just do not go away. So this is an opportunity for me to ask everyone to become an ally for the cause of fairness and justice. It starts and ends with us. We want a Cumbria that encourages diversity. It's good for our county in so many ways. Cumbria has some real problems to overcome. The virus, poverty, unemployment, worries about our future, and getting our Cumbrian voices heard in Whitehall. There are so many real issues that need our attention. These are things that are happening to us. We don't need to add issues that we're doing to ourselves. So please hear my little voice. It's a plea for everyone to be involved in the right way. We all need to care, and we need to show our caring. We all have the power to do this. So in my 20 minutes, I think it's been about 15 minutes of talking to you, I hope you've gathered the importance I place on each of us. Take a chance. Speak up for yourselves and others. It's for all of our sakes. Now I'm going to end with a tiny but powerful quote from Judge Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Fight for the things you care about, but do it in a way that will lead others to join you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and thank you for listening. Oh, thank you for those of you who are clapping. Okay, what happens now? I can't hear you, Sonia. You're on mute.
Sorry, my screen was messing around there. So sorry. Thank you very, very much. That's a wonderful, wonderful speech and very empowering words. It was great. I mean, something simple as speaking out is just not everybody. It's not possible for everyone. And like the way you said, it's usually within our own primary groups, you know, within our families and loved ones. So it's so important. I'd just like to address to you. I've got a few questions for you. Sorry. Just my screen's just, I'm not getting the questions. Just here. Okay, Marcia, I was told you are very inspiring. Would you be able to chat about how we can help make sure Happy Mums Foundation can support women from all backgrounds with mental health problems?
Some of you know, those of you who don't know, I'm about to tell you. While I'm retired, I'm a psychologist by trade and by working. So obviously for me, mental health is vitally important. We are no good as human beings if our mental health is in any way impaired or damaged. Most of us are walking around with poor mental health, unfortunately. We take better care of our cars than we do ourselves. The way to actually help that is to, as much as you can, demand from your doctors, your GP, that you get services. And when I say demand, you know you're going to go to your GP, you're going to tell your GP you're depressed and you want some help. Your GP is going to tell you that you have to wait for services. He'll put you on a waiting list. I always tell people that when you're waiting 6 months to be called, that's not good enough. Call the GP back, become a pain. Call your MP, become a pain to them. Because the only way services will increase is when money is given to services. In the meantime, though, most of you have really good friends, allies, and or you know people who can get you those things, where you have a space and a forum to talk. Talking is vitally important. So you need to do the job on the one hand of thinking about the big picture. What you want is one-to-one services that you know you need to pay for. You might not be able to get that. Be a pain while you're waiting. And at the same time, go to somebody locally who's more easy for you to access to get some help. That actually isn't just for the BAME community. It is more for women because we seek it more. But the reality is men need it also. Does that answer your question, Sonia? You're muted.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. I've got another question for you. Racial hatred. This is by Ella. Racial hatred is particularly insidious online, especially in the wake of Brexit. How do you facilitate conversation? So what's your opinion about that?
I have to be honest with you, I totally agree. And one of the things I feel I must do for my own mental health is guard myself. So in all honesty, when it comes to checking messages, I look at the beginning of those messages, and if they're negative, I don't read anymore. I truly, truly, truly do shut it down. I don't respond because for some people, there is no acceptable response that you can give that will help change their minds. So I don't engage with those people. I do think we all seem to need, even though I personally don't understand why, we all seem to need social media a lot. It is a useful forum. Look at what we've got going on today. That wouldn't be there without social media. So it's got its place. But some of the individual nastiness that is allowed and can be tolerated because you remain so anonymous you have to be careful with it. Parents, I always say, watch what your kids are doing. You know, your job is to protect your children, and for yourself, watch what you're doing. Engage with people who can help you, not engaging with people who can tear you down. There's no point to that.
Thank you. Uh, Another question by Ella is, how do you facilitate conversation with young people when they are watching some content that can sow seeds of racism?
Actually, I generally, no matter whether it's a young person or an older person who clearly has a different point of view than I might have, I actually just talk to them about why that's interesting. You know, it's very simple to know that something is wrong, but I really genuinely want to understand why they're watching it and what the point is of them watching it. So I ask. However, I do ask them if I can listen, they must listen to me. Engage in conversations that sometimes too involved. I don't mind that because I think those conversations are worth having. Some of you heard me talk about an older gentleman who actually was well known by me, who is quite a negative human being. And he spent his time telling me how wrong I was about my own, meaning African history, Black history, the current climate relative to Black Lives Matter, because in reference to slavery, Black people sold Black people. In reference to Black Lives Matter, it wouldn't be so bad if there wasn't so much Black on Black crime. I didn't want to engage in a conversation with him, but I felt I had to. So we talked about the fact that actually his data on its own, just looking at what he said, might be accurate, but it's totally out of context. I gave him, remember that bit about doing the research? I gave him what I knew about all of this. We spent some time talking about that, but then I want to go on and do the bit that I also talked about, giving him hints about how he can help. I've listened to you, you listen to me. Understand the value of hurting somebody by your racial slurs. Know that you need to stop those slurs. It's horrible. You wouldn't do it to your grandchild. You wouldn't do it to your own son or daughter. Don't do it to somebody else's grandchild or daughter. We came to common ground, and he said he's bothered when he's in front of me because ultimately he knows he has to be careful. I'm okay with that. Be careful. We all need to stand up, and we need to let people know that we expect better. Generally, they know that from watching us and what we say and do. Did I answer that, Sonia?
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that. I have a question from Sally Elton Chalgrove, Professor Sally Elton.
My friend Sally.
Yes. So she wanted to know, speaking up for race equality is indeed important. As a teacher educator, I try to ensure BME students have a voice. But I find that the silence of some white students is also quite worrying, because this means that their racist or disconscious racist attitudes are not voiced, and thus and they're not challenged. So, do we recognise voicing of negative attitudes in order to challenge them? So, do we encourage voicing of negative attitudes in order to challenge them?
I think it's worth encouraging, but I also think it's worth understanding sometimes that silence is because they know they need to be silent, but you know you need a conversation. So sometimes, especially somebody who's in that teaching forum, the job really is to sometimes say what you know they want to say but won't say. You've put it out there without naming anybody as the person who's doing it. You've helped them because you've just put their conversation out there, but you've also helped the conversation occur. But you get to be the bad guy. Sometimes that's better.
I suppose, yeah, it's instigating it. So yes. Got another question. Do you feel the emergence of cancel culture in the younger generations are making it harder to have conversations across generations about race and other social justice subjects? If so, do you have any suggestions on how we can address the damage of cancel culture to these important conversations?
You know what, when you all know I'm in my 60s. So when my parents were talking about me being young, they said things like, we can't talk to you. Parents in their 40s now say about their children, we can't talk to you. It's a pretty familiar theme that adults say to kids, we can't talk to you, you won't talk about anything, and that there's a silence in there. So I think we should always expect the silence from kids. Remember, the job of kids is for them to believe that they know everything and don't need to share anything.
Yeah.
So our job, I think, is to sometimes hold the conversation knowing they're not necessarily going to initially get the answer or get engagement. But I also always use examples of others. I always do that. You know, Joe Blow's parents down the road, they said, Joe Blow is never a real person, okay? But they said this, that, and the other. So that you're bringing, again, it's like the teaching experience, you're bringing that conversation to the front where you are encouraging the conversation, because sometimes that's what you need to do. I did talk to my grandkids about the difficulty of adults talking to kids in general. And they did say, well, nobody wants to hear us, you know, because they believe sometimes they don't want to be heard. And I said, I sometimes need a clue from them. When do they want to talk? You know, sometimes we need to find out from them when they're open to have a conversation. I have learned car trips are fantastic places to have conversations. You know, they're stuck in the car with you. Sometimes that's great.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's no way out. Absolutely. I mean, I often find with kids, when you do try and engage with them, it's like, just leave me alone. But that also means that you've got to explore further. So yeah, absolutely agree with what you're
And
saying.
to just leave me alone, I often say 20 minutes of conversation, I will leave you alone, so that they can have a little bit of what they want right after I've got a little bit of what I want.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you very much. That was absolutely wonderful. We really appreciate